They fired me less than 24 hours before I was supposed to receive a multimillion-dollar bonus. My boss thought she had outsmarted me. The CEO believed he had saved the company a fortune. HR was already preparing a speech about restructuring and difficult business decisions. What none of them knew was that years earlier, I had written a single clause into my contract specifically to prevent this exact situation. By the time they realized what they had done, the board was holding emergency meetings, lawyers were scrambling, and the company was about to write me the biggest check of my life. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and this is how an entire executive team destroyed their own careers because they never bothered to read the fine print. The moment I stepped into the headquarters of Sterling Capital that morning, something felt wrong. People who normally greeted me suddenly became fascinated with their computer screens. Conversations stopped when I walked past. Even the receptionist could barely look at me. Then my phone buzzed. Urgent performance review. Conference room be immediate attendance required. That was all the message said. I almost laughed. For 12 straight quarters, I had delivered record growth. 3 weeks earlier, I had secured the largest client in company history, a deal projected to generate nearly $30 million over the next several years. My performance reviews had always been exceptional. Nobody schedules an emergency performance review for someone who just made them millions. They schedule those meetings when they want to get rid of you. As I walked toward the conference room, I noticed employees avoiding eye contact. One manager I had personally mentored for years practically ran into another hallway when he saw me approaching. That was when I knew. Before entering the meeting, I made one quick stop at my office. Inside a locked drawer sat the original copy of my employment agreement. I pulled it out and turned directly to a section I knew by heart. Clause 1 to be. The clause I personally negotiated during my last contract renewal. The clause nobody else had taken seriously. The clause that was about to change everything. I slipped the contract into my portfolio and headed for the meeting. Inside the conference room sat my supervisor, Melissa Harper, along with 2 HR representatives who looked absolutely miserable. There were no reports, no presentations, and no laptops. Just paperwork. Melissa cleared her throat and forced a smile. Lauren, due to company restructuring, your position is being eliminated effective immediately. No explanation, no discussion, no warning. Just like that, I listened quietly while she delivered the speech she had obviously rehearsed multiple times. When she finished, she asked for my company badge. I handed it over without hesitation. The surprised expression on her face was priceless. She expected anger. She expected panic. She expected me to beg. Instead, I smiled and thanked her for letting me know. What she did not understand was that they had just made a catastrophic mistake. My annual equity bonus was scheduled to vest the following day. The executive team believed firing me before that deadline would save the company millions. Unfortunately for them, Clause 1 to be existed specifically to prevent that kind of manipulation. The language was crystal clear. Any executive terminated without documented cause within 24 hours of a scheduled vesting event would automatically receive accelerated compensation, additional penalties, and full protection against arbitration restrictions. In simple terms, firing me early did not eliminate the payout. It doubled it. Instead of leaving the building through the main exit, I headed upstairs to the legal department. There I found Daniel Ross, an assistant corporate attorney I had worked with on several major negotiations. The moment he saw my expression, he knew something had happened. They fired me, I told him. His eyes widened. I handed him the contract. A few seconds later he was reading Clause 1 to be. Then he read it again. His reaction told me everything. Lauren, he finally said, this is airtight. I know. They really fired you one day before vesting? I nodded. Daniel leaned back in his chair and shook his head slowly. They just triggered every protection mechanism in this agreement. That was exactly what I wanted confirmed. I left copies of every relevant document with him, including contract amendments, approval records, digital signatures, and archived communications. Years earlier, when negotiating the agreement, I had made sure every change was documented, time-stamped, and preserved in multiple locations. If anyone ever challenged the clause, the evidence would already exist. As I left legal, I stopped by compliance and met with Emily Carter, one of the sharpest analysts in the company. She reviewed the documents and immediately understood the situation. They thought they were being clever, she said. They usually do. Emily promised to escalate the issue through proper channels. By that point, the trap had already closed. Meanwhile, panic was spreading through executive offices. Melissa was desperately searching for performance complaints, disciplinary records, or anything that could justify my termination. There was just one problem. None existed. My record was spotless. No warnings, no investigations, no complaints, nothing. The company had spent years praising my performance. Now those same records were becoming evidence against them. Within hours, senior legal counsel received the contract package. When they reviewed Clause 1-B, the reaction was immediate. Emergency meetings were scheduled. Board members were contacted. Financial exposure calculations began. And for the first time, people started realizing how expensive this decision might become. The CEO, Richard Bennett, initially dismissed the concern. He insisted I was bluffing. He claimed nobody would enforce a clause like that. Then legal showed him the signed agreement. His signature appeared directly beneath the language. So did Melissa's. Both had initialed every page. Neither had actually read it. The room reportedly went silent. Legal estimated the company now owed me more than $6 million. That number continued growing as analysts reviewed additional compensation triggers connected to the agreement. Richard was furious. Melissa looked physically ill. Neither reaction changed reality. The contract was enforceable. The evidence was overwhelming, and every attempt to avoid responsibility only made their position worse. The following morning, I received a phone call from a board member named David Reynolds. Unlike the others, David understood exactly what had happened. He did not call to argue. He called to assess the damage. "Have you hired outside counsel yet?" he asked. "Years ago," I replied. There was silence on the line. Then he laughed, not because it was funny, because he finally understood. I had not spent years preparing revenge. I had spent years preparing protection. The difference mattered. Everything unfolding now was simply the consequence of their own decisions. Over the next several days, the company scrambled to find a solution. Settlement discussions began. Internal investigations followed. Board committees reviewed executive conduct. Lawyers analyzed every document. The conclusion remained unchanged. The company had violated a contract they voluntarily signed. There was no escape. Eventually, the board approved a settlement package exceeding $6.5 million. The payment arrived shortly afterward. Melissa resigned before the situation became public. Richard survived technically, but only barely. His title changed. His authority disappeared. Within the company, everyone understood what had happened. The man who thought he was saving money had cost the organization millions. As for me, I spent the following weeks evaluating opportunities. Word travels quickly in executive circles, especially when someone defeats an entire leadership team using nothing but preparation and documentation. Several firms reached out. One investment company offered something I had never truly received at Sterling Capital. Respect, not just a position, not just compensation, a genuine seat at the table. One evening, while sitting on the balcony of a hotel overlooking the city skyline, I received confirmation that the settlement funds had been finalized. I looked at the number on the screen, $6.5 million, a life-changing amount of money. Yet surprisingly, it was not the part that mattered most. The money was never the real victory. The real victory was proving that competence still matters. Preparation still matters. Details still matter. For years, executives treated contracts like formalities and signatures like decorations. They assumed authority made them untouchable. They assumed nobody paid attention to the fine print. Unfortunately for them, I did. Before putting my phone away, I sent one final message to the chairman of the board. Only for words. Read the fine print. Then I closed the screen and watched the city lights flicker across the horizon. I was not angry anymore. I was not seeking revenge. I was simply moving forward. The company thought they had removed me from the game. Instead, they handed me the winning card and signed their names on the back. And that is how an executive team trying to save $4 million ended up paying more than $6 million because they underestimated the one person who actually read the contract.